It's Farm Girl here, and we are live for Five Live today. Five Live is part of the Talk Farm to Me podcast, and it is where we get to ask a farmer 5 questions. I am going to invite our guest today, who is Kyle Clark from Clark Dairy Farms. And I'm inviting him right now. Here we go. And Kyle should be with us any second. I want to invite all of you who are here joining us for Five Live to participate. This is your chance to ask a question of our farmers and to really get to know them.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
It's great. It's great to see you.
You too.
I was just saying I was hoping you were bringing a cow with you, but it looks like you might be indoors.
We thought about it, but I didn't think the audio would warrant it.
Yeah, maybe they might moo over you.
Yeah, they would.
All right. Well, we're going to have some fun anyway, even if you don't have a cow with you. For those of you who would like to see Kyle's cows, you can follow him on Instagram at Clark Dairy Farms. And it has an S at the end, so don't get confused. So you guys can really keep in touch with him. You can follow me here at XOXO Farm Girl and also on Talk Farm to Me, all of us on Instagram, and just keep up with what's going on. After this interview, it will be posted on my feed and on my IGTV feed, which is where this stuff lives. So for all of us to get started, we are going to hear from you a little bit about your farm, and
sure,
you got about 30 seconds to give us the whole story.
Okay, 30 seconds. So I'm a 5th generation. So the farm was bought by my great-great-grandfather in 1907. He passed away when my great-grandfather was in his teens. My great-grandfather Lynn sold the cows, saved up some money, went back to high school, got his diploma, came back, put the cows back on. They've been milking here ever since. So I'm still working here with my father. I'm in partnership with my father. My grandfather's here every day, works harder than me most of the time. Yeah, as of March this year, we started the creamery and started bottling milk. We're making butter and various variations of fluid milk, and yeah, brings me here
to today. And how many cows do you guys have? Am I allowed to ask that question?
Yeah. So we milk about 200. We raise all our own young stock and replacements. So we probably have close to 400 head or so.
Fantastic. I want to let everybody know out there, in case you don't know what a heifer is a female cow. But yeah, they, when they're raising their own cows, I mean, this is just like good vocabulary to know. It's a cow before it's ever had a baby. And I know from having a lot of visitors to my farm that people are always asking me about my goats and do I milk them? And I'm like, no, I don't breed them. You actually have to breed a cow or a goat in order to milk it. So those are important facts for everyone to know out there. We're going to get started with our 5 questions. And the first one is, and you've already alluded to this, is that you work with your family and your grandfather's there every day and your dad is there. And I know you have some siblings, so I'm not sure who else is there working on the farm with you, but I'd love for you to talk to us a little bit about the pros and cons of working with your family. Okay, they're not watching, so it's okay. You can tell the truth.
Okay, all right, I will. I'm very fortunate. My father and I have a unusually good working relationship. We work very well together, so that's great. My grandfather, that's probably one of my favorite parts of being a farmer, and the reason why I came home to farm here was because of the history and the family, and that's one of the best parts. And I love working with my grandfather. Learning from him is outstanding. Yeah, it's one of the most rewarding things, but it can be the most difficult. I do have a twin brother and an older sister. Neither of them are working on the farm, which is potentially for the better because I probably don't get along with them quite as well as I do my father and grandfather. But yeah, it's pretty special.
And so tell me, does your grandfather give you some advice or get in your business a little bit about how you're doing things now that you're two generations apart, so.
Well, I always seek his advice first because it's usually worthy. But yeah, he's extremely intelligent. Was a remarkably good farmer when it was his, and yeah, we look to him more often than not. So.
Well, that leads me to my next question, because I read an interesting article from 1974 that Grandpa Pete was talking about how he was a really progressive farmer, and about how hay and the hay that you feed your cows, or that he was feeding his cows back then, was really key to having healthy animals and also taking care of the environment, and that he was really recognized as an environmentally conservative kind of person. And I'm wondering now, 2 generations later and a good 50 years later, what you are thinking about with regard to the future and taking care of your farm and the environment with all that you've learned from him.
Yeah, so quality forages is probably, feeding cows is the most expensive thing that we do, hands down. So our homegrown feed and its quality is, the largest impact to our margin. And so we try very, very hard to make quality forages. We grow corn, legume hays and grass hays. And, that's our goal. And Grandpa, from, way back then, taking care of the land and making sure you're not taking more out of it, you're always putting back in what you're getting out of it, nutrient management, fertilizing, crop rotation. We don't make nearly as much dry hay as we used to for, technology's evolved, crops have evolved, the way we feed cows has changed. For instance, we feed a TMR now, which is a total mixed ration. All our feeds are mixed in to one. Back then they component fed, so everything was fed out separately. And that was a big advantage of his quality dry hay, and why he loved it so much. Plus the weather's changed. It's a lot harder to make dry hay now than it was back then. There's a lot more extremes.
So that's pretty interesting. As a modern farmer, you're dealing with the way that our climate has changed, and also with different ways that you're feeding your animals. Talk a little bit to us about how you're handling, for example, you say, you're harvesting corn there on your property. Are you getting most of what you feed your cows directly from your own land? And explain to us how that works.
So we don't grow any grain just for lack of land, basically. And that's one of the biggest challenges farming in this county and this region of the state really is it's so steep, rocky, heavy soils. It's not the greatest land for growing crops, commodity crops especially. So land availability is hard. We travel very, very far to grow enough forage. So right now we're probably growing and harvesting a little over 60% of all the feed that we use in a year. And the rest of it is supplemental grains and vitamins and such that we buy in. But yeah, corn, Grandpa always grew corn as well, but we grow a lot more of it now. And so it's challenging. We would grow all of it if we could, but that's part of the reason why we went to the creamery, because adding more cows, getting bigger becomes not feasible. It gets too expensive to grow enough feed to travel that far, and to beat around these hills to try to feed cows is difficult.
Yeah, it is hilly out there in Delhi, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I think interesting that you were talking about the creamery, and I think all of our listeners, I think it's really important. Kyle's in New York State, and this is emblematic of what's happening across the country, especially with small family dairy farms. In New York State, in the last 10 years, has lost more than 2,400 family dairy farms. So let's talk a little bit about the creamery, because there used to be creameries up and down country roads in New York State, and now there are very few. And instead, dairy farmers are really having to sell their milk to cooperatives. And we'll talk about this more in our deep dive Talk Farm to Me podcast. We have a dairy series coming up. But today, we get to talk to Kyle specifically about this incredible creamery that they built. They opened it on March 1st, 2020. You know what that coincided with, folks out there who have been dealing with this pandemic. It's a tough time to open a new business stream, but I really want to hear about the creamery and how important it is to your farm.
Yeah, so like you said, we opened March 1st. That might have been a blessing in disguise, really. It was very nerve-wracking there the first couple of weeks when everything went down, but I think it's really installed, support behind local food systems and, a need for that security. So it's been great, I think, obviously. But
why don't you explain real quick what to everyone who's listening, just in case they don't know what a creamery is?
So we historically have sold our milk as a commodity. So it's marketed through our co-op, basically a brokerage who most of the time we don't even know where it was going or what it was being made into, as much, most commercial farms do. So we built a creamery, which is a milk processing facility right here on our farm. So now we take a portion of our own milk. I'm processing about 20% of it now, and we pasteurize it and bottle it or make butter or whatever dairy products right here. And then we market it direct, and we're doing the distribution ourselves as well.
And the other 80% goes to the co-op?
Yeah, we're still selling through our co-op, yeah. So co-ops are groups of farms that all pay into the co-op. We're basically paying to have our milk marketed and distributed. That's how we ensure we have a market, and it's far more complicated than that, but in a nutshell. So.
Yes, in a nutshell, it is complicated. The whole co-op business is very, very complicated. I've been spending a lot of time with dairy farmers across the country talking about this, and the co-ops as well. So we will dive into those issues on our deep dive. But again, tell us what is in your creamery and how much milk you're processing now there.
Yes, so 20% of our productions is about 120,000 pounds a month. I couldn't tell you the math off the top of my head, but it's
120,000 pounds.
So
it's
a fair amount.
That's another important thing for everyone to realize, is that we don't measure, not we, but they, but I'm not a dairy farmer, but we're here together, so I'm feeling it. We don't measure milk by the gallon, we measure it by a pound. And so you'll hear people talking about milk in terms of hundredweight, which is 100 pounds of milk, which is about 12, 14 gallons. Something like that.
Yeah, it's 8.6 pounds to a gallon.
8.6 pounds to a gallon. All right. Okay, so folks out there, you're listening. This is a good time to ask a question. If you've got another follow-up, we'll continue with Kyle, but you can press that little question button. You can type it in there. You can type in a comment for Kyle or for me if you'd like us to answer anything specifically. While you're thinking of your big question, I'm curious, you've got your future in front of you, Kyle, and I'm wondering, if money were no object, what would you do if you could do one thing differently?
Oh.
Come on. Tell the truth.
I would do a lot if money were no object.
Let's do it.
If money were no object, I would never have to deal with broken equipment ever again, because we'd just replace it. But honestly, my dream is to be able to process all our milk and distribute all our milk and have a retail location ourselves, which has kind of evolved. I never thought I was into that. I didn't think I was into being so consumer centric, but I've grown to really enjoy this aspect of it in the almost a year now. So that's something I really want to do. And we're just trying to spread kind of the truth and transparency of the dairy industry, and we just want it to live on to the next generation, whoever that might be.
That's great. Well, I appreciate that. And I certainly know that broken equipment can be a huge headache. I have seen you and your dad toiling over some equipment. So you're not only a dairy farmer, you're a corn and other legumes and vegetables and what have you, grass farmer for your cows, and you're also a mechanic.
Unfortunately, yes.
So
I leave most of that to my father if I can help
okay.
it.
Well, that's nice. You have a division of labor.
Yeah.
I have a question here, and I just it just popped up on, this is cool. Popped up on my screen. What advice would you give to new dairy farmers?
Oh my gosh. I think a new dairy farmer, if you're trying to start from scratch, unfortunately, it's nearly impossible at this point, because dairy farmers have gotten so good at producing milk. We are way overproducing it. We're producing beyond consumption every year at, I think, 1.5%. So, we've flooded the market severely. That's the root of the dairy crisis in and of itself. So as a new dairy, and there's new things coming up, the Spaces program they've put us on, where they've limited you to 85% of your production as of March. I think to get started now would be really difficult. The overhead is just absolutely astronomical. And I think now you would even have to buy up some of that base milk to get started even. And eventually, if things probably keep going in that route, just milk basis, the right to produce milk to be marketed, will probably be as valuable as land and equipment itself, because there's going to be a fight for it.
So all that said, that dire advice, you want to stay where you are being a dairy farmer, even though there's a big challenge.
I mean, I guess if I didn't give any advice, if I had to give advice, I would say, the average age of a dairy farmer in this state is, I don't remember it's upwards of 70 years old. These guys are still doing it at that age for the sole reason that they don't want to give it up and they don't want to see it stop. I'm sure there's a lot of them out there who would love to have someone come in and work their land and their herd, and just for the sole reason that they could see it continue in their name. You can ask any dairy farmer who I've ever met, none of them are doing it to get rich. So that would be my advice.
Awesome. Thank you.
It's hard for me to give advice. I'm a young dairy farmer myself.
You've heard plenty of advice, I'm sure, being around the farm with your dad and your granddad. So we'll take that advice. One of our listeners is interested in the idea of maybe an old school milkman or milkwoman delivering milk. Is that something that would be feasible or interesting for a small creamery?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely trending right now, and we think about it all the time. I think it would be fun, but I'm not ready to jump on it quite yet. Just learning logistics at the scale I'm doing it now is a wild experience. So to, increase my stops tenfold, I need a lot more organization skills developed before I can start working that. But I think it's cool. It's definitely something to think about. So.
Well, it sounds like you might have some customers who are just waiting. So I'm sure they'll be following you at Clark Dairy Farms on Instagram. I've asked my questions and we've added a couple, but you're going to hate me for this, I think. But you have to move cows around a lot on your farm from field to field and in and out of what they call the parlor, which is where cows get milked. And I know that your family has a special way to move the cows and a special way things that you say to those cows. And just to help you out, I swear I did not get this for this. I wear it all the time when I go to the grocery store. Just to help you out, got to move the cows. Let's hear it.
So yeah, I don't know where this came from or how it started, but it's been tradition my whole life. It's the kabasi call, and they know it when they're out in the pasture, and they'll come running. So
I want to hear it. Come on.
that was about it.
No, come on. You can do it. I know I've heard a little bit of it. You're
You
blushing.
can find it
just
on
go ahead. Do it.
You can
We
find
want to
it
move
on
those cows.
our IGTV. It's on there. You can see them come and everything.
You're not going to do it for me? I can't believe it.
I apologize.
He's too embarrassed. All right. I'll share the video of them calling the cows and moving them. It's pretty cool. Last question. Cookies or cocktails?
Oh, cookies, because I'd have to have milk.
I knew you were going to say that. All right. What's your favorite kind?
I think it would be my father's molasses sugar cookies.
Oh, all right. Well, he's going to have to share the recipe. I'm going to make it, and I'm going to share it out there on Instagram for all of y'all. You guys can follow me here, XOXO Farm Girl, and find out more about Talk Farm to Me at Talk Farm to Me. Don't forget to follow Kyle. Keep up with the creamery and what they're doing. They're doing hard work. They're a small family farm. They have delicious, fresh products, take great care of their cows. So follow them at Clark Dairy Farms. All right. See you guys next week. We'll be here on Thursday at noon. We'll either be talking about little pigs or cannabis. Questions, send them to me. Talk soon.